Chapter 49. Trial of the Puppet Insects. Josue Chi moved through the trial cavern with practiced silence, his boots barely disturbing the dust on the stone floor. Tomika followed closely behind, her small frame tense with every step. The cavern's damp air clung to their skin, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and ancient stone. They had come to gather the 36 puppet insects, a task assigned by the elders of their village. The insects were rumored to be imbued with the spirit of the earth itself, their movements guided by unseen forces of nature. Tomika's hands trembled slightly as she reached for a cluster of glowing insects clinging to the cave walls. She had been quiet since Candie Liu's warning the night before. The old woman had spoken of forbidden love, of hearts that could be shattered like fragile porcelain, and Tomika had felt the weight of those words settle heavily within her chest. She dared not look at Josue as they worked, her gaze fixed instead on the insects, as if they held the answers she could not find within herself. "They are restless tonight," Josue murmured, his voice low but steady. He adjusted the strap of his sword, the leather worn smooth from years of use. His eyes scanned the cavern, alert for any movement that might signal danger. "We should finish quickly." He did not mention the unease he felt himself, the sense that something was wrong with the cavern's usual stillness. Tomika nodded, her throat tight. She wanted to speak, to ask if he felt the same way she did, but the words would not come. Instead, she turned away, her fingers brushing against a small glowing insect that clung to the wall. It flared brighter for a moment, then dimmed as if sensing her sorrow. Josue found a moment of quiet beneath a cluster of stalactites, his mind drifting back to the conversation with Ina earlier that morning. She had been waiting for him at the edge of the village, her expression a mix of concern and quiet resolve. The 5 spiritual beads had been a secret he had carried for years, a burden he had never shared with anyone. But Ina had seen through his silence, her eyes holding a depth of understanding that made him feel both seen and vulnerable. "Your mother was a White Miao Priestess," she had said, her voice steady, though her fingers had tightened around the small pouch she carried. She was one of the few who could wield the Water Spiritual Bead's power, and she was the last to leave the village before the drought began. She paused, her gaze fixed on the distant hills. "The drought is not natural, Josue. It is a sign of something deeper, something tied to the feud between the Black and White Miao." Josue had felt a chill run down his spine. He had never known his mother well, only the stories whispered by the elders, the fragments of a life cut short. Now, those fragments were beginning to form a clearer picture. The Water Spiritual Bead, the drought, the feud, it was all connected. And Ina, with her quiet strength and deep knowledge of the old ways, was determined to help him understand it. Later that afternoon, as they prepared to leave the cavern, Josue noticed Emily handling Karl Jui's body with unusual care. The old man had fallen ill during their journey, and Emily had been the one to tend to him until his final moments. She had carried his body back to the village, her expression unreadable as she laid him to rest in the village cemetery. But now, as Josue watched her, he saw something that unsettled him, a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer around her hands as she placed a small offering of flowers beside Karl's grave. "What was that?" Josue asked, his voice low as he approached her. Emily turned to him, her expression calm but her eyes holding a flicker of something he couldn't quite place. "Nothing, Josue. Just a small offering to honor his memory." "But the shimmer," he pressed, his voice firm. "I've never seen anything like that before." Emily hesitated, then sighed. "Some things are better left unspoken." Josue felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had trusted Emily, had relied on her wisdom in times of need. But now, her secrecy felt like a betrayal. He turned away, his mind racing. If Emily was hiding something, then what else might she be hiding? And what did it mean for the 5 spiritual beads? That evening, as the village settled into the quiet hum of evening, Josue and Ina met beneath the old banyan tree at the edge of the village. The air was thick, with the scent of blooming jasmine, the soft rustle of leaves the only sound in the stillness. "We must go to Dali," Josue said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within him. "To seek guidance from Tina Wen. She's the one who can help us understand the 5 spiritual beads, and perhaps the drought as well." Ina nodded, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lanterns strung between the trees. I will come with you. The Water Spiritual Bead's power is tied to the White Miao, and I will not let the drought continue to claim our people. Josue felt a surge of gratitude. Ina's resolve was a balm to the uncertainty that had been plaguing him. He knew the journey to Dali would be long and dangerous, but with her by his side, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. We leave at dawn, he said, his voice firm. We must gather what we need before the next storm hits. Ina placed a hand on his arm, her touch light but grounding. The path ahead is not an easy one, Josue, but we will walk it together. The following morning, the village awoke to the sound of birdsong and the distant hum of the river. Josue and Ina packed their supplies, their movements deliberate and unhurried. Tomika watched from a distance, her heart heavy with the weight of her unspoken feelings. She had hoped that Josue would notice her, that he would see the love she carried for him, but now, with the journey to Dali looming, she felt as though she was slipping further away from him. You should come with us, Josue said, his voice soft as he approached her. We will need your strength. Tomika shook her head, her cheeks flushed with a mixture of shame and determination. I cannot. I must stay here and help the others. But Josue began, but Tomika turned away before he could finish, her bare feet sinking into the soft earth as she walked back toward the village. Josue watched her go, his heart heavy with the weight of her silence. He had always known she cared for him, but he had never realized how deeply it ran until now. He turned to Ina, who had been watching the exchange with quiet understanding. She is hurting, Ina said softly, but she is also strong. She will find her own path. Josue nodded, though the words did little to ease the ache in his chest. He knew Tomika's heart was no different from his own, and the thought of her suffering in silence was unbearable. As they prepared to leave, Emily approached them, her expression unreadable. Be careful, in Dali, she said. The White Miao have their own secrets, and not all of them are meant to be shared. Josue met her gaze, his mind still troubled by the shimmer he had seen the day before. I will be careful, he said, his voice steady. But I will not let secrets stand in the way of what needs to be done. Emily nodded, her eyes holding a flicker of something that might have been regret. Then I will not stop you. The journey to Dali began at first light, the sun casting long shadows across the path. Josue and Ina traveled in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. The path wound through dense forests and over rocky terrain, the air thick with the scent of pine and earth. They passed by small villages, where villagers greeted them with polite nods, their faces wary but respectful. Do you think Tina Wen will help us? Ina asked after a long silence, her voice barely above a whisper. Josue glanced at her, his eyes reflecting the soft light of the morning sun. I don't know, but we have to try. Ina nodded, her expression thoughtful. The drought has been a burden for so long. If we can find a way to end it, to restore the balance between the Black and White Miao, then perhaps we can find peace for our people. Josue felt a surge of determination. The Water Spiritual Bead's power was not just a relic of the past, it was a key to the future, a way to mend the rift that had divided their people for generations. As they traveled, Josue found himself thinking of his mother, of the stories he had heard about her. He had always assumed she had been a simple priestess, a woman who had served her village with quiet devotion. But now, with Ina's words echoing in his mind, he realized she had been more than that. She had been a leader, a woman who had carried the weight of the White Miao's traditions on her shoulders. Why did she leave? Josue asked aloud, his voice breaking the silence between them. Ina paused, her gaze fixed on the path ahead. She left because she could not bear to see the feud tear their people apart. She believed that the only way to end it was to walk away, to let the village find its own path. Josue felt a lump form in his throat. The thought of his mother walking away from her people, from the life she had built, was both heartbreaking and inspiring. He had never considered that she might have made such a sacrifice for the sake of others. I will not let her sacrifice be in vain, he said, his voice firm. I will find a way to end the drought, to bring the White and Black Miao together. Ina placed a hand on his arm, her touch gentle. You already have begun, Josue. The path you walk is the first step toward healing. They reached Dali as the sun began to set, the city bathed in the warm hues of twilight. The streets were bustling with activity, vendors calling out their wares, children laughing as they chased each other through the narrow lanes. Josue and Ina moved through the crowd with practiced ease, their eyes scanning for the familiar signs of the White Miao village. We should find a place to stay, Ina said, her voice calm. We can ask for guidance from the elders when we are rested. Josue nodded, his eyes scanning the crowd. He felt a sense of relief at being in a place where they might find answers, but also a deep sense of unease. The White Miao had always been a people of mystery, and he knew that finding Tina Wen would not be as simple as he had hoped. We will find her, he said, his voice steady, and we will find the answers we need. Ina smiled, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lanterns strung above the street. Together, we will. As they walked, Josue felt the weight of the 5 spiritual beads pressing against his chest, a reminder of the responsibility he had taken on. He knew the journey ahead would be difficult, but with Ina by his side, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path to healing was not an easy one, but it was a path he was ready to walk. The city of Dali, with its ancient streets and quiet traditions, offered a glimpse of the world that had once been, a world where the White and Black Miao had lived in harmony. Josue hoped that by finding Tina Wen, they could reclaim that harmony and bring an end to the drought that had plagued their people for so long. As they turned down a narrow alley, the sound of laughter and music drifted from a nearby courtyard. Josue paused, his eyes catching a glimpse of a familiar figure standing at the edge of the courtyard, a figure that made his heart skip a beat. Ina, he said softly, his voice barely audible. Do you see that? Ina followed his gaze, her expression softening. It's Tina Wen, she said, her voice filled with quiet reverence. She has been waiting for us. Josue felt a surge of hope. The journey to Dali had been long, but it was worth it. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, he felt as though he was on the right path. The alleyway led to a small courtyard, where a woman stood beneath a willow tree, her robes a deep shade of indigo, her hair braided with strands of crimson silk. She turned as they approached, her eyes holding the ancient, watchful quality that Josue had come to associate with the White Miao elders. Welcome, Josue Chi, Tina Wen said, her voice calm and steady. I have been expecting you. Josue felt a chill run down his spine. How had she known he was coming? And what did she know of the 5 spiritual beads? I have come seeking guidance, he said, his voice firm. About the 5 spiritual beads, and the drought that has plagued our people. Tina Wen nodded, her expression unreadable. Then you have come to the right place. But know this, the path you walk is not an easy one, and the answers you seek may not be what you expect. Josue felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had known this journey would be difficult, but the words of the elder carried a weight that made him feel as though he was stepping into a storm he could not see. I am ready, he said, his voice steady despite the fear that threatened to overwhelm him. Tina Wen smiled, a small, knowing smile that held the wisdom of ages. Then, let us begin. As they followed her into the courtyard, Josue felt a sense of hope, but also a deep sense of unease. The journey to Dali had just begun, and he knew that the path ahead would be filled with challenges he could not yet foresee. But, with Ina by his side, he was ready to face them all.